everyone, it's April here, bringing you another video. Today's video is basically a comprehensive guide for American Girl dolls, especially used ones. Now this video doesn't contain buying guides, but it offers information on caring for your dolls, repairing them, and customizing them, along with common lingo you might see in the American Girl doll community. Since there are several different topics in this video, I have added timestamps in the description in case you want to skip ahead to the information you need. So with that, let's get started. First, we will cover hair. Always use a wire wig brush or a wire hair pick. Always mist the hair with water before brushing or picking. Start at the bottom of the hair and work your way up. Note, a doll stand is a great way to stabilize your doll while working on their hair. If your doll's wig needs a deeper clean, washing the wig with either wig shampoo or Dawn dish soap are great options. After washing, you can let the hair air dry or use a medium to low heat setting on your hairdryer. Note, whenever you're doing anything water related with your American Girl doll, you want to protect the cloth body because it can become moldy and musty if it gets wet, and you want to protect the eyes because they can rust if they get wet. If your doll's wig is frizzy, I recommend either flat iron on the lowest heat setting after misting the hair with water, or using a garment steamer. Note, these methods are for straight or wavy hair. Now let's talk about curls. If your doll has naturally curly or wavy hair, most curls can be fixed by twisting them around your finger after misting the hair with water. But if that doesn't work, here are some other options. The first option is commonly referred to as the hot water dunk. You roll your doll's hair into rollers and you dip them in 165-degree water for 10 seconds at a time until all the curlers have been dipped. Then you dunk the hair into cold water to set the curls. The second option is a garment steamer. You use it to heat up each individual roller. I usually spend about 10 seconds on each one. Then you wait until the hair cools before pulling out the rollers. So this first picture is right after I removed the rollers. The second picture is after I separated the curls, and the third picture is after I brushed it out. Note, curling irons aren't a good option. Doll hair is synthetic, so think plastic. Whenever you heat plastic up, it becomes moldable, but it's not until it cools down that it holds shape. Also want to make sure your water isn't too hot. If the water is too hot or the wig is left in it for too long, it can dry out the wig, causing it to be brittle and lifeless. Now moving on to wig replacement. You will start by pushing on the edges of the old wig with a spoon until the wig begins to pull up. Then you can grab the wig with your fingers and pull. If it's very stuck, you can use a steamer or dunk it in hot water to soften the glue. Never use acetone on a wig you want to reuse because it destroys it. It's okay if there's some glue and hair left behind. It actually gives the new wig something to grab onto, making it easier to put on. Just trim down any long hairs that are still attached. I have heard that Grace's wig is very difficult to remove, so I don't recommend this as your first wig removal. Now let's put the new wig on. First, I turn the wig inside out. Then I hold it in place in the front while I use my other hand to pull the wig down into place. Use gel-style super glue to attach wigs. I prefer gel because it's a lot easier to control and less likely to cause a mess. I believe you can also use E6000 glue, but I haven't personally tried it. I gently pull up the edge of the wig, add a few drops of glue before pressing the wig back into place. I repeat this process as I make my way around the entire circumference of the head. Now let's talk zip ties and neck strings. Newer dolls have heads secured to their bodies using zip ties, whereas older dolls used a much more convenient neck string. The only advantage of a zip tie, in my opinion, is that you don't have strings showing with some outfits. Otherwise, they tend to make things more difficult, so I typically convert dolls to neck strings, and now I will show you how. Step 1. Use a seam ripper or scissors to carefully remove these threads holding the gap closed. Step 2. I grab the zip tie with needle nose pliers. Usually that is enough to make the zip tie snap, but if not, I use side cutters to carefully cut the zip tie. Step 3, remove the old zip tie. Step 4, run string into neck channel using a very small safety pin. And that's it. One of the most common problems you will run into with used American Girl dolls is loose limbs. So here is a condensed version of how to restring the limbs. First, you will need to remove the head and stuffing. Then you can cut the elastic that connects each limb to the body and set the plastic cups to the side. At this point, you can wash the cloth body if you need to. Use needle nose pliers to remove the cups from inside the limbs. We are now ready to start restringing. Push the elastic through the cup and crimp the metal ferrule in place. Trim the elastic. Since the replacement elastic I use has thread holding it together, I heat the end to prevent fraying. Now you will push the elastic and cup into the limb. Pull the elastic through the cloth body and add another cup. Pull the elastic tight before crimping the metal ferrule into place. Repeat for all the limbs. Restuff and place the head back on the doll. Note, there are several videos, including one that I did, involving using hair ties or zip ties on the elastic that's already in the doll. This is a temporary at best solution. If the limbs are loose, the elastic is already breaking down, so stretching it further only helps for a little bit, so therefore I don't recommend it. There are several places online where you can purchase restringing kits, but since I restring so many dolls, it's not really a feasible option for me. So the items that I use will be linked in the description below. Next up, let's talk about stains. Every used doll I receive, I clean with a magic eraser. It will remove most marks on the doll. Be careful using it on the face, as it can remove some color if you scrub too hard. Some tougher spots might require a little bit of acetone, and the worst spots that have already soaked into the vinyl require an acne cream treatment, which involves putting acne cream containing benzoyl peroxide, mine contains 10% benzoyl peroxide, onto the stained area. Then I like to wrap it in saran wrap to keep the cream from drying up for as long as possible. Then you place the doll in sun or under a lamp until the cream dries up. Then you wipe the old cream off and replace with new. And then you repeat these steps until the stain is gone. Now on to eye swaps. Before we get started, I want to note that not all eye swaps are created equal. Different face molds equal different difficulty levels, but I have done the easiest face mold and the hardest face mold using this method. And while the hardest face mold wasn't fun, it got the job done. In my experience, Asian face molds and Addy have been some of the hardest eye swaps I have done. Newer dolls are generally more difficult because the vinyl is naturally harder than older dolls. So with that said, these are the steps I use. Step 1, boil water. Step 2, place head upside down in a bowl with a towel. If your doll has earrings, be sure to leave them in. Step 3, carefully pour boiling water into the head. Cover with a towel and leave for 8 minutes. Step 4, wear heat-resistant gloves. I use thick rubber cleaning gloves. Dump the water out of the head. Use your thumb to reach inside of the head and push against the back of the eye socket. If your thumb isn't strong enough, you can use a wooden spoon or dowel rod. Sometimes this can dent the back of the eye socket. If that happens, push it back out from the front before installing new eyes. Time is of the essence. Every second that the hot water is out of the head starts to cool down, making your job more difficult. So have your new eyes ready to push into the head. I use my finger to provide counter pressure as I pop the eyes into the head. You will need a small tool, mine is out of a nail kit, to move the eye into place in the socket. Note, if the head starts becoming too hard from cooling down, repeat steps 1 through 3 to reheat the head. Trying to do an eye swap on a head that isn't hot enough can lead to cracking the mold. Eye swaps are not easy, especially your first one. It is my least favorite thing to do when it comes to repairing and customizing dolls. So just remember to have patience, and you'll get there eventually. So now let's take a closer look at the eyes. There are 4 main parts to the eye: the metal eye case, the bottom black plastic holder of the eye, the eyeball, the weight, and the lashes. On the back of the eye, the silver part is a weight. Sometimes this can cause an issue if it becomes loose. If that happens, you can always glue it back in place using a small amount of super glue. This top black plastic piece that also helps hold the weight in place is actually the back side of the eyelashes. Another common problem is the little plastic post on the side of the eyeballs. Sometimes they break. To fix this one, I heated up a needle and pushed it into the eye and then trimmed it down using side cutters. The last thing I want to discuss is repainting the eyes. To repaint an eye, you will need to remove the weight and the lashes. Then I use a hairdryer to warm up the eye. I take a small pick and start to remove the paint from the center of the eye. In an ideal world, it pulls up all together, but oftentimes that isn't the case. So I continue heating up the eye as needed and removing the paint until it's gone. Note, this isn't the easiest procedure to perform, and it's very easy to break things. Now we are ready to repaint. First, I add the pupil color using black acrylic paint and a fine tip paintbrush. For this eye, I'm adding sparkle, so I will paint the glitter paint on first before adding my pupil color. The last step is adding the outer ring before reassembling your eye. When adding the eyelashes, I will add a small amount of glue to the top rim of the eyelashes. Then I will hold it in place for a few seconds until it's dry. Now I will put the weight into place. If you haven't broke off the tabs, the weight should stay in place without adding glue, but if you have broke a tab, you might need to add some. Now the eye is complete and ready to go into a doll. If your doll has any scuff marks, you can try using a dry magic eraser, micro mesh pads, or an electric nail file to smooth the area out. Now we are moving on to more in-depth customizing. First up is eyebrow repainting. I remove the original eyebrows using acetone. Then I use a stencil I made of a basic eyebrow shape. I use a watercolor pencil of my desired color to add faint lines. I start with more straight lines, and as I go further back, I slant them before bringing the lines down at the end of the eyebrow. I remove the stencil and fill in the eyebrows how I want them. After doing an eye swap, you might need to paint the eyelids to match your doll, or maybe you just want to paint them to make them look like eyeshadow. I always paint after installing if I'm swapping eyes, so the paint doesn't get scratched on accident. Once the eye is in the head, mix your desired paint color. I add a little bit of water to my paint so that it's thinner and doesn't gum up. I use a very fine paintbrush to carefully paint the eyelids. I usually do about 3 coats, waiting for the paint to dry completely in between each coat. When adding eyelashes, the sky is the limit. I personally use a black watercolor pencil, starting on the outside and working my way towards the middle, making the lashes shorter as I go. If I add bottom lashes, I also make them longer on the outside and shorter on the side closest to the nose. You can also add some little details to make the eyes appear to have different shape. For example, adding a brown triangle on the inner side of the eye, or adding some lightning on the outside of the eye with a white watercolor pencil. For adding blush, I use the desired color pink in a watercolor pencil. I dip the tip of the pencil in water and start coloring it on. Then I use my fingers to dab the color until it's even and how I want it. If I want to add freckles, I use a brown watercolored pencil. If I want the freckles to be lighter, I don't dip the pencil in water, but if I want them to be darker, I do. For the lips, I use watered down acrylic paint. I usually mix in a metallic paint color to create a shimmering effect. I use a fine tip brush to apply the paint to the lip. I generally do 3 coats, waiting for each coat to dry completely before adding another. After finishing the face, I seal it using Mr. Super Clear and Matte Finish. I have tried using other matte finish sprays, but the result generally left the doll looking oily. Next up, adding tattoos. When adding a tattoo, it depends on the design and color, but usually I use a mix of fine tip marker and watercolor pencils. After I finish the tattoo, I will seal the area using Mr. Super Clear and Matte Finish. There are 2 different common methods to pierce your American Girl doll's ears. The first method will allow you to use American Girl doll sized earrings. Step 1. Use an awl to make a hole in the desired location of the piercing. Step 2. Drill through the hole you made with the awl using a 5/64 drill bit. Step 3. Push the awl into the hole again. Step 4. Place the earring inside the hole. The second method is for using human earrings in your American Girl doll. Step 1. Use a thumbtack to put a hole in the desired location. Step 2. Put an earring in the hole. Now for the basics of dyeing a doll. The first thing you need to know is that you must use RIT Dye More. Other dyes do not work. RIT offers a color chart on their website, but you should know that dolls have a tendency to come out darker than the color chart indicates. Simply follow the directions on RIT's website to dye your doll. Note, you will need to remove your doll's eyes, wig, and stuffing before dyeing. If your doll has ever had an acne cream treatment, the dye will not stick to anywhere where the acne cream has been applied. Note, used dolls with scuff marks and other kinds of damage may not come out even. Note, I recommend stirring constantly. It is very easy to get dark spots on the limbs from being too close to the heat source for too long. Note, the dye does not smell good. I typically do this in front of an open window with a fan blowing the fumes out. Whenever I finish dyeing a doll, I typically coat all the vinyl parts in Mr. Super Clear matte finish to avoid any dye transfer, but I'm also told that boiling the parts afterwards will remove any excess dye, but I have not personally tried this yet. The last thing that I want to touch on before we move on to common American Girl lingo and face molds is dyeing wigs. Dyeing wigs, in my experience, does not work, so I don't recommend it, and I have personally tried it. I've tried several different methods. If you're interested in the results, you can watch it in this video. Now on to face molds. There are technically 12 different face molds available. I usually focus on the nose as a quick way to identify each mold. Corinne and Nenea have very similar noses, so for them I mainly focus on the eyes. Corinne's eyes are physically bigger than all other American Girl dolls. Note, this also means that you can't use the same eyes for swapping with Corinne as you do with all the other dolls. Kaya was the first and only female doll to come with a closed mouth. As a general rule, face molds are named after the first doll that came out with a mold. The exception to this rule is the classic mold and the Asian mold. Now, I did say that technically there are 12 different face molds. The reason that I said this is because while the Boy Truly Me dolls have the same face molds, their mouths are actually closed, making them slightly different, as you can see here. Fun fact, in 1991, they put Pleasant Company tags inside of Samantha's head, and now the 1991 Samanthas are referred to as fortune cookie dolls. Now let's tackle some common lingo. JLY stands for Just Like You, the original line of look-alike dolls without any names that we now refer to as Truly Me dolls. TM is the short for Truly Me. GOTY stands for Girl of the Year. AG is American Girl. GUC, Good Use Condition. In a resale market, this means the doll might have some minor defects. EUC, Excellent Use Condition, means that it should be basically like new. Samber refers to a Samantha with amber eyes. WB, White Body. The first American Girl dolls originally had white-colored bodies instead of tan. OOAK, Original One of a Kind. This is generally used to refer to custom dolls. TLC stands for Tender Loving Care Needed. Possibly damaged hair or stained, usually a sign a doll needs a more in-depth fix. AGP refers to American Girl Place, such as American Girl Place Nashville, American Girl Place Chicago, New York, etc. BNIB, Brand New in Box. BST, Buy Sell Trade. BB, Bitty Baby. BF, Be Forever. BT, Bitty Twins. CYO, Create Your Own. These are custom dolls you can create through American Girl. ISO, In Search of. MCM, Madison Children's Museum. They host an annual benefit sale of AG items. Meat Outfit. This refers to the outfit the dolls originally came in from the store. PM, Pre-Mattel. PM, Private Message. Silver Eye. It's a defect where the doll's eyes become silver in color. WW, Welly Wisher. PC, Pleasant Company. Original American Girl brand before Mattel bought out. So that is all I have for you today. If there's anything I didn't include that you have a question about, please let me know with a comment below. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked that video and would like to see more like it, please be sure to subscribe to my channel. And I hope you have an adorable day.